Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's presentation, India's Primate Story, Evolution and Survival, is brought to you by NatHab Expedition Leader Varun Devaraj. Varun began his natural history career working with the Keystone Foundation in the Nilgiri Mountains, focusing on afforestation and conservation, providing before spending 5 years at Sapura Tiger Reserve in India's Central Highlands, guiding safaris among leopards, sloth bears, wild dogs, and tigers. He worked as a consultant helping wildlife properties with their programs, content and marketing initiatives, and explored the trans-Himalayan region of the Ladakh before joining NatHab as an expedition leader in 2023. As a naturalist guide, Varun covers diverse terrain from the tiger reserves of central India to the western Ghats to Ladakh, with extensive experience exploring habitats from the Sundarban mangroves and the arid environments of Gujarat and Raja. I'm sorry. Maybe you can help me with the pronunciation of Rajasthan.
So that's
Varun.
Sundarbans and Rajasthan, which is the deserts of the west or the western part of India. Yep.
Thank you, Varun. I really do appreciate that. Well, without further ado, Varun, take it away.
Well, thank you, Rob, for that kind introduction. And welcome everyone to today's daily dose of nature. Like Rob said, this today is about India's primate story, evolution and survival. Now, the first thing when anybody talks about wildlife of India, you don't think about India's primates, and it's usually the tigers, the elephants, and the rhinos and other species, and rightly so, they do get attention. But I think India's primates have been overlooked in the past, and today I just hope to throw a little bit of light on the primate story of India. And yep, and over to my next slide. Well, I think Rob's covered my introduction, but just a couple of points. I've been doing this for about 15 years, and with NatApp since 2023, and I think the rest of it, Rob did throw some light on it. Now, when you talk about primates, now this map, and I'm sorry in advance. I love maps, so you're going to be seeing a lot of maps. This map shows both the fossil primates as well as the living primates. Now, if you noticed, you've got like back where you are in North America, there were primates found there in the past, and so did some parts of Europe, Southern Europe especially, parts of England, and the and parts of Northern Africa, even the desert area of the Sahara Desert, and areas that today don't have primates but had them historically. Now, the darker orange, what you see is where there are living primates currently, which is Central America and south parts of Southern America, the African continent, most of sub-Saharan Africa, and Asia, along with the islands of Indonesia and Southeast Asia, all the way into Japan. Now, this is fascinating because at one point of time, all continents other than Australia, Antarctica, and the Arctic belt had primates. So goes on to show how successful primates are in occupying various niches around the globe. Now, if I move on to my next slide, you can see that this is the current picture of the primates in the world today. And as as I said in the previous slide, they've been largely extinct from North America, large parts of Europe, parts of Southern America. I mean, Australia never had them to begin with. So we can classify them broadly into the New World monkeys and the lorises and the Old World monkeys. Now, the New World monkeys, as is clear from this map, is mostly Central America and parts of South America. And when you talk about the Old World monkeys, it's monkeys and apes. I don't want to leave the apes out. Is Africa, parts of Northern Africa, Asia, Southeast Asia, and the bark in yellow is Madagascar, which is crucial for understanding primates. And you can find Madagascar is full of amazing lemurs, which is endemic to that island and is found nowhere else in the world. Now the red line is apologize for the terrible drawing, but the red line is the Weber line basically, which is an imaginary line which in 1900s they uh, scientists went on to describe this line to show that there hasn't been migration of mammals beyond this line from the west towards towards the east into Australia, Papua New Guinea, and New Zealand, and the other way around. When you talk about marsupials in Australia, haven't gone further west across the Weber line. Now, this line is kind of crucial in understanding movement of mammals, especially primates that we are talking about today, where it's almost like this line that they don't cross. And there are various theories to that, but even during glaciation and periods of the ice ages, the mammals for some reason did not cross this line. We're talking about the marsupials and the kangaroos stayed in Australia, and the primates largely stuck to the eastern end would have been Sulawesi or the Indonesian archipelago and wouldn't have crossed further east. So this is interesting in understanding how the distribution of primates happens across the globe as we know it today. Well, now, coming to the Indian picture, well, this is a map which I'm going to keep going back to because India, as you know, is a hotbed when it comes to species and diversity of primates as well. When you talk about the New World primates and the African continent, maybe it pales in comparison in terms of the number of species. I mean, right now, I think India has about 23 or 24, depends on uh, which you know scientific group you belong to. I will explain that in detail. But India, when you look at this map, has got Afghanistan on the northwest, Pakistan and Afghanistan on the northwest, a large coastline, the Arabian Sea, the Indian Ocean to the south, and the Bay of Bengal, which is to the east. And then you've got, as neighbors, you've got Burma or Myanmar on the east. You've got China on the north, and so and you've got the smaller countries of Bhutan and Nepal in there as well. If you can, I mean, if you can see the white bits, which is the Karakoram range and the Himalayas, that's largely defines what India is. It's these impenetrable mountains that divide China from India, and it keeps the Gangetic Plain, as we call it, lush because it stops the monsoon-bearing winds from the Arabian Sea from going further inland, and gives us all this rainfall that we have, making it possible for all these amazing forests that we have, enabling these primates to survive in good numbers. So the Himalayas, along with the Western Ghat Mountains and the Eastern Ghat Mountains in the south, are some of the barriers to these rains which enable these large, lush forests to grow, in ensuring that these primates have a home. So over to the next slide. Now, I don't want to make this into a history lesson, but we've got to kind of understand the evolution of primates to understand where we are today. Now, if you look at this map from current biology, is that the the late Cretaceous between 900, I mean 90 and 65 million years ago was when you started to see the primates sort of spread and then start to split into different groups. Now, between the Pleistocene, 55 million years ago is a crucial period because you have the what you call as streptophine and haplorhine, which is basically strepsirrhine and haplorhine, which is basically wet-nosed and dry-nosed to make it easy to understand. So strepsirrhine, which is the lemurs and the loris groups, are wet-nosed, and the haplorhine are considered the dry-nosed primates. Now, the one in the middle, which is an adapid, went extinct about 35 million years ago, which was part of the strepsirrhine family, which is the wet-nosed, and that was extinct 35 million years ago. And now, if you look at the haplorhine family and the streptorhine family, they started to evolve around the 35 million years ago and spread into different groups. Now, this also coincides with the breakup of the Gondwana land and spread of continents. Now, Madagascar, around this time, around 55 or a little earlier, started to split from India, and then prior to which it was part of it was joined to India and the African continent. So you start to see the split of continents happen along with the split of the species. Now that makes it really interesting. Now, of course, the lemurs are only found in Madagascar. The loris groups are found in the Old World as well. The tarsiers are found in Southeast Asia, but they're not found in the Old World, Africa, or in India. And you got the early simians, which then spread on to become the old world monkeys, the lesser apes, the greater apes, and us, of course, humans. So this is how, and that split of great apes and thing happened only about a 1.5 to 1.7 million years ago. It happened between 5 and 1.5 million years ago, depending on which scientific paper you subscribe to. But this gives you a rough idea of how the spread of species and the evolution of species happened, and and the basic difference between the wet nose, the strepsirrhine, and the haptorrhine. There are other morphological or physical attributes that are different, but this is the easiest way to understand it. Now I move on to okay. In today's context, there are over 533 species of non-human primates and over 723 species and subspecies overall. Now, when you look at that diversity, that is phenomenal diversity. Phenomenal diversity of primates, largely restricted to the tropical belt in the New World and the Old World. And the diversity is stunning, is amazing. And to think that 128 species and subspecies have been described since 1990. Just get that in perspective. Since the 1990s, when a lot of scientific methods and equipment and devices and technology was available to us, even after that, you had discoveries of species and subspecies. And since 1990, 56 from Madagascar, and that is understandable because of the diversity there, 16 from Africa, 25 from Asia, and 33 from the neotropics of the New World. Now, to throw some light on some of the species. The Arunachal macaque, which is on the top left-hand corner, was a macaque that was discovered in 2005 in India. I mean, that late in 2005 to describe a new mammal, let alone, it's amazing when people describe frogs and snakes, but to describe a new mammal as late as 2005. And the Tapanuli orangutan was discovered after that. And the Kipunji as well, 2004, and the Prince Bernard's TT again after the 2000s. So these are amazing discoveries, and you're not talking about small. I mean, they are small primates, but they're not small, insignificant invertebrates. So we're still discovering species, and we're still the scientific community is still, splitting some species, not just based on DNA, but other factors as well. So it makes the primate world some of the most interesting mammal life forms to study and to sorry about that to talk about. Now come back to this map again, just to give you an idea again that to understand the lay of the land. Uh, and I keep switching between this map and my next few slides so that you understand where we find these species within the landmass of India. Excuse me, I've got a little bit of a sore throat. I apologize in advance. Well, when you talk about India's primate affinity, well, you've got the rhesus macaque, one of the common macaques found in the Indian subcontinent, in the Indian, in India, and the Himalayas baboon, which is found in North Africa, is related closely to this macaque. And if you come down to the bottom left, and the mandrill, which I think everybody has seen pictures or has been to Africa would have seen them, is closely linked to a macaque we have in southern India called the lion-tailed macaque. It's one of another fascinating species of macaque called the lion-tailed macaque. It's closely linked to that. Now, on the top right-hand corner, you have the grey langur, which is commonly found throughout India, is linked and closely linked to the golden snub-nosed monkey, which is found in China. Sorry. And the Hulok gibbon, which is India's only ape, is related to the pileated gibbon of Southeast Asia. So India gets its primate affinity, like its mammal affinity, from Africa, from China, and Southeast Asia to understand this, if you look at the map in the previous page, you understand what I'm talking about. You know, there's species that have speciated through from Africa through Afghanistan, Pakistan into India, from China through the passes, the mountain passes, from Southeast Asia through the mountain passes again. So you've got all this amazing diversity thanks to this, to the position of India, where it stands. And the Himalayas have largely kept these species isolated over the years, but the speciation has managed to happen through passes and through other methods. Sorry. And talking about India's primates, I would like to start off with talking about two of our smallest primates. These are, nocturnal species, and they're not active diurnally, or they're very inactive during the day. And the one on the left is a fascinating species called the slow loris, which is found in the northeast of India. I'm going to go back to this map. When I say northeast of India, you're going to talk between Bangladesh and Bhutan, the area that is between Bangladesh and Bhutan, which is the northeast of India, which has 7 states like Assam and Meghalaya, Arunachal, and all of the other, what we call as the seven sisters. So the slow loris is found in the northeast, and the slender loris, which is on the right, is I mean that one's taken by a friend of mine who's a fellow NatHab guide, and that looks like it's we keep making jokes about this, but it looks like it's in the kung fu mood, ready for some action. But they're highly nocturnal. So that's the slender loris, which is probably is our smallest primate, and unfortunately, the best way to see them is during the night, and these photos were taken during the night, but it's nearly impossible to see them during the day unless you're extremely lucky. And what's fascinating about these creatures is the one on the left, the slow loris, is highly specialized to certain habitats like the slender loris. And one of the amazing fun facts, or one of the amazing facts, is that it excretes a toxin from the inner elbow of its forelegs. And it's a harmless oil when it's by itself, but when it's mixed with the saliva of the slow loris, it is a toxin. And this is probably the only other mammal that I know of, I could be wrong, other than the platypus, that has that that produces a toxin. So that's an amazing fact about the slow loris, and it's found in the northeast of India. And for the NatHab guests who travel on the Grand India tour and go to the Kaziranga leg, into the Kaziranga part, there is a chance, you can never rule it out, there is a chance you get to see this. And where, with regard to the slender loris, again another nocturnal, amazing, fascinating creature, which relies on stealth and moves so slowly that it largely remains unseen by other predators. And this is found in southern India, in the forests of the dry deciduous forests of southern India, and sometimes in the mixed deciduous forests as well. Now I'm going to slowly move on to the next slide. And throughout India, you'll find various pockets of forests which have the grey langurs of India. Earlier, termed as just one species. Now, I mean, it depends on which scientific literature you subscribe to, but right now there are six, and with multiple subspecies. I'm not going to go into detail about every one of them, but suffice it to say that these distinctions have been made on genetic studies, as well as the way they carry their tails, the tail carriage, and the structure of their faces. So if you could see the Bengal langur has a looping forward-facing tail, whereas the Lesser Hill and the Central Himalayan langur, on the ninth, the third, and the fourth, have a looping tail, but they don't necessarily come down. They just continue to go upwards. And if you look at the dark-legged Malabar langur, which is found in the southern part of India, you've got the tail carriage looping backwards, except for one subspecies which has the forward-facing looping tail. But to give you an idea, there's this. All of these are species now, and the grey langur is not one species; it's six. And I don't know what the future holds. It may come back to one, or maybe expanded to nine, for all we know. But currently, the most common leaf-eating monkey that you find in the Indian subcontinent, in India, is the grey langurs of India. Now, there's six special species, and the northern plains langurs, the Kashmir grey, the terai, which is found in the northeast. And now I'm going to keep switching slides. So the northern plains langurs are found in the Gangetic Plain and those areas. The Kashmir grey langur, as the name suggests, is found in the Jammu and Kashmir belt, which is the northern stretch of India, right next to the Himalayan mountains. Well, you got the Terai langur, which is found in the northeast of India between Bhutan and Bangladesh. And the Himalayan langur again in the Himalayan mountains. The southwestern langur is found in southern India, and the tufted as well is found in southern India. I don't expect everybody to remember where they're found, but it's just to give you an idea of the diversity of the langur species and where they're roughly found, so that you know on your next trip to India, whether it's your Central Indian trip or the Grand India trip or the Tiger trip, which species of langur you're likely to come across. Um, Now, if we move on, the next species is the one that's really close to my heart. It's from back home. When I say back home, I come from the Nilgiri Hills. It's the southern bit. If you see, there's a hills that's called the Nilgiri Hills. That's where home is, and this is the Nilgiri Langur. I mean, it's found in the other southern hills as well, but it's named after the Nilgiri Hills and it's called the Nilgiri Langur. Now, one of the most fascinating leaf-eating monkeys that you will come across, extremely shy, extremely dependent on the habitat, and it's largely restricted to untouched semi-evergreen, evergreen, and shola forests. When we talk about shola forests, these are high altitude cloud forests, and that's where this particular primate called the Nilgiri langur makes its home. Extremely shy, but beautiful, beautiful nonetheless, with a golden tinge on its face, a silverish golden tinge on the face, and again, leaf-eating monkey, extremely docile, tries to shy away from human beings. So that's essentially why they've not done too well, given that a large part of their erstwhile habitat has been destroyed. But there's still some viable populations found in southern India, and they are on the small road to recovery. So that's some positive news from back home. Yep. And now, these two beauties, or these three rather, while the one on the left is the capped langur and the one on the right is the golden langur. Now, these two species, I mean, there is a chance of encountering them on the Grand India tour that NatHab runs in Kaziranga and those forests around Kaziranga. And some of the most spectacular looking primates, they are again leaf eating monkeys, and they stick around in small troops, and they've got the most fascinating faces. You can spend hours looking at them as they eat bamboo leaves or any other foliage that are around that time of the year. And their leaf eating means they also consume a lot of fruit and nuts and things like that. And some of the most fascinating primates, when you look at them, they seem like the most, and they're very calm. These leaf-eating monkeys are calm. They stick around. They're shy to begin with, but once they know that you don't mean it any harm, they tend to become more bold. And you see the interaction between the young and the mothers, and some of the most beautiful faces. You can spend hours looking at them and photographing them. And with the modern day tele lenses, you don't have to worry about disturbing them, and just make for great portraits. Not just portraits, but just get mammalscapes. And the one on the right is the golden langur, and you can see the sheen. You may not always be lucky to see them in this color, but during the monsoons and some of parts of the post monsoons, which is in June, July for us, you will see them in their grandeur, and they are absolutely stunning. They stick out in the green, dark green foliage, like this picture right here. And as they go up and down the bamboo shoots, and I mean, it makes for such special viewing, as well as amazing photographs. Now, these two species, again, like I mentioned, I'm going back to the map, are found in the northeast, between Bhutan and Bangladesh. And so that's the northeast, is these seven beautiful states, which are highly diverse because of the amount of rainfall they get, the amount of forest that, amount of dense forest that they have. And so these special langurs are found in the northeastern states. Now, this one is a special leaf-eating monkey called the Ferry's leaf monkey. Now, it's found in the state of Tripura. You're unlikely to see them on the NatHab trip, but nonetheless, if you were to extend your trip and to see this particular monkey, it is a fabulous, fabulous species, and again, highly, localized in certain pockets of the state of Tripura, and not easily seen outside of that place. But in those forests, they're quite easy to come across. And another fabulous species, which are mostly leaf eating. They feed on fruits like figs. And the face, I mean, this is found in Southeast Asia. It's not exclusive to India. They're found in Southeast Asia. But, uh, to have this kind of diversity in the country of India, and to come across a species like this anywhere, and let alone in a beautiful background like the one you see on the right, but is some of the most fascinating creatures you'll come across. They're extremely shy again, like all the other leaf-eating monkeys, but you give them time and they tend to get bolder and come out, and really, really fascinating for watching them, and seeing their behavior, as well as makes for fantastic photographs. Then again, Tripura, to answer your question, sorry, I'm gonna go back to that slide, is again in the northeast, close between Bhutan and Bangladesh. So there's a lot of action there for primates in India, along with the southern Western Ghats and the southern mountains. So the leaf-eating monkeys are found in the northeast as well. Now the next slide. Okay, now I'm going to switch to the next set of species, which are macaques. They're a little bolder. They tend to come out. Uh, so the four species that you see on the screen right now are the rhesus macaque on the top left-hand corner, which is found throughout most of northern India. The one on the right top hand is the bonnet macaque, the three of them there. And the reason they call the bonnet macaque is you can see that little hairdo that they've got. It almost seems like they've just been to the barbers. And fascinating, fascinating primates found in the southern part of India, the peninsula, southern peninsula. And on the bottom left hand corner is the pigtail macaque. This picture shows the tail, which looks like a pigtail. Again, found in Arunachal, in the northeast, and the Assamese macaque, again found in the northeast in the state of Assam. Uh, what makes these macaques fascinating is they're omnivorous. They will eat insects. They will feed on other, meat if they're lying around. They don't hunt, but they primarily feed on insects and fruits and shoots of young leaves, and so they have an omnivorous diet, and they are a bit more bold, and they tend to do better in human dominated landscapes as opposed to the langurs or the leaf-eating monkeys. So their numbers are slightly better. Not to say all of the macaques are doing well, but largely their numbers are slightly better than the leaf-eating monkeys. Now, the other four that I'm going to talk about is the Arunachal macaque, which I touched about in the first few slides, which was discovered only in 2005. It's found in the state of Arunachal Pradesh, which is again in the northeast. The top right corner is the white-cheeked macaque. Now, the white-cheeked macaque is another fabulous species found in Arunachal. This state seems to be a fantastic state for primates, and a large primate diversity there. And the one on the bottom left is, of course, the Nicobar lion-tailed, I mean, long-tailed macaque, which is found in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands off the coast of Southeast Asia, off the coast of Thailand, which is closest to Southeast Asia, but is part of India in terms of an administrative sense. And the Tibetan macaque, which is the bottom right, is found in parts of Arunachal, which is an extension of uh, the land from the Tibetan highlands into Arunachal Pradesh again. This one state has phenomenal primate diversity, and the macaques are well represented along with the leaf-eating uh, langurs. Now, so there is this species called the stump-tailed macaque, which is found in Assam, close to the park which is Kaziranga, where the NatHab trip operates. Uh, there's a uh, there's a park, there's a small reserve forest called the Hulongapur Reserve, And the stump-tailed macaque, along with a number of other primates, is found in that forest. And this stump-tailed macaque is also called the bear macaque. Now you can understand why. When the they're well-built macaques that are aggressive towards their own kind, calm around human beings. You can walk and see them, and they're aggressive towards their own kind, and they largely spend time in the lower canopy as opposed to the leaf-eating monkeys. Largely spend time in the lower canopy, feeding off shoots, fruits, and anything else that they can find. And again, they're omnivorous, and they're some of the most interesting species. Their social dynamics is so interesting. And what's fascinating is it's one of the species of primates which is matrilineal. So they have dominant males in the troop, but those are not the males that determine where the troop goes, where it feeds, how the social dynamics within the troop function. It's matrilineal, and that is governed by a group of one or two or maybe even three older females. Now that makes the species really interesting, and the troop depends on these two or three females to survive and to negotiate the perils of the Indian forest, to survive the threats that the leopards pose to them, the tigers pose to them, and the other carnivores pose to them. So they depend on these matriarchs to lead them, and that's a fascinating little bit of an insight into their behavior. And they're again an amazing species to spend time around. They're great to photograph. They give you time once they're comfortable with you being around them, and once you find a troop. So another chance of seeing them in Assam, again the northeast, again another special place for the the bear macaque. Now, this gorgeous macaque is the lion-tailed macaque found in southern India. The forests of southern India. Our nat habitats don't operate there at the moment, but never know in the future we could operate there. And the lion-tailed macaques are some of the most fabulous, fascinating species of macaques that you come across. When you look at it for the first time, you think, oh, it may be the mane. That's why it's called the lion tail, but it's actually, I mean, the lion macaque, or it's sometimes referred to as the lion macaque, but it's the tail that it's called. I mean, that's why it's referred to as the lion-tailed macaque. But the face, you could be forgiven into thinking that the first time I saw it, I thought, wow, the mane looks like a lion's mane. Maybe that's why it's named the lion macaque. But it's the lion-tailed macaque, and one of the most fascinating species, uh, beautifully patterned with these big, long silver beards, and as you can see on the picture on the left, the young are born rather pale colored, buff colored, but as they age, they grow these fabulous manes, lighter colored, silver colored manes, and these very interesting eyes, and they are again omnivorous, but they're largely dependent on number of species of trees, a handful of species, and one of them being what we call as the culenia. Culenias are these large, gigantic buttress trees that have these fruits, that develop these fruits that are like the jackfruit, which is like a spiny fruit that's quite hard to get to. And the lion-tailed macaques have evolved to have these canines almost, which can break this fruit open and get to the tender bits inside. So if you notice the forest where this culenia trees are found, you there's a good chance that these lion-tailed macaques are around there. So they sort of have evolved along these forests which carry these culenia trees, along with a few other, the jackfruit trees and a few other species of forest trees in southern India, and their habitat has been largely destroyed due to plantations of tea, coffee, and logging for wood. But now they're slowly starting to make a comeback because India's got really strong laws when it comes to protecting wildlife, and they're slowly making a comeback. And it'll be a shame to lose these beautiful species. So right now, their home is protected, and hopefully, their numbers start to increase and populate all of these protected forests. And yeah, maybe give us a chance to see them. So. And now the largest of our primates in India is also our only India's only ape, the Western Hulock gibbon. Now, this fascinating primate can be seen in the Hulongapur forests around Kaziranga and even in Kaziranga. So the NatHab groups that operate in Kaziranga for the Grand India Tour, there's a chance of seeing the Western Hulok gibbon, which is India's only ape. I mean, there is some scientific debate about the fact that the Hulok gibbon is divided into the western and the eastern is also found in India. Well, at the moment, the verdict is still out, and we will stick to just I would stick to suggesting that the western Hulok gibbon is the species found in India. The eastern, there are small forest patches where some of the scientists think that the eastern is also distributed, but for now we'll stick to the western Hulok gibbon. And you've got this beautiful. The male on the right has got this quizzical sort of white eyebrow. If you look at it, it's almost like a puzzle look that it's got on its face. And on the left, you've got this masked appearance of the females and the young. And again, it just makes for some of the most beautiful wildlife viewing. They sway from, they're largely arboreal, they barely come down onto the ground. They sway from these large trees and branches from one tree to another, making these vocalizations which sound like that they echo in these large, tall forests, and you can just spend hours underneath them. Uh, yeah, and you end up with a bit of a neck pain because you're constantly looking up, but it's worth the pain. Trust me, these are some of the most amazing species to look at as they swing from one branch to another. Again, they're found in smaller groups, and there's a lot of vocalization that happens between troops. And these forests in northeast India, like in Kaziranga, come to life because of this species, along with the other langurs as well, not to leave them out. But the species of primates, like the Western Hula gibbon, that give these long-ranging calls, these whooping calls, which are fantastic to listen to. And it's almost like you've arrived in northeast India when you hear these species. Their voices booming in the mornings or late evenings. So this is another fascinating species of ape, and India's only ape. So we treasure them, and hopefully, the forests are protected, but the northeastern forests uh, are you know coming under pressures of mining and coming under pressures of logging, but largely the forests where they're found are protected, and hopefully in the future their numbers improve, and they spread across all the other large treed forests or large canopied forests that we have in the northeast of India. uh, Yep. So I know I've just barely touched upon each species. I'd love to get into detail about every one of them, and I could talk about hours on them. But we've got a time limit, and we'd like to stick to that. So I would now talk about the last part of my presentation for today, which is the conservation bit of it, which is really important. Now, if you look at the top left-hand corner, there's a person feeding this troop of macaques, which is the rhesus macaques. Now you've got to understand how India operates. We are a country of 1.4 billion plus people, so that's a large, massive population. India is a large country, but it's nowhere the size of the US, or it's nowhere the size of China. So we've got huge population pressures on our forests, on our. I mean, so apart from that, the Indians have always been tolerant towards wildlife, which is a plus because we have these large landscape mammals like elephants and tigers survive along with the primates because of largely because of the tolerance that the people have shown towards these mammals, but also that brings them into conflict with these animals because the proximity of the humans and the animals have always been an issue when it comes to India. Now you have people feeding them out of a kind of love towards them, but not realizing that when you start to feed them, they start to look at humans as a source of food, and then they start to get more aggressive towards human beings, and that leads to close proximity, which also could result in diseases being spread from humans to macaques or the other monkeys. So, and then of course, in the picture in the middle, you see that old sage in the orange robes petting these macaques, because there also is a religious connotation to monkeys. So the Hinduism, the predominant religion in India, considers monkeys as holy. So you've got that issue, which people, when they see them, they think they're holy. They offer them food. They try to bless them. They try to seek blessings sometimes, and this leads to a lot of conflict. The picture on your right top is the lion-tailed macaque, which I was talking about, and they're trying to raid a car and trying to open the window to get inside and to see if there's any food. And the bottom left, if you see this gentleman he's trying to make a macaque dance. Now, although this has largely stopped in India, the performing monkeys are still found in remote corners of India where they use macaques and train them to do these dances as a way of entertainment and make money of them. And I know it's terrible. It rarely happens these days, but it still goes on in some remote corners of India. Now, it's a practice that's come. The laws come down hard on them. The forest department, or the like, you have the wildlife services in the U.S. The forest department handles a lot of the wildlife law in India, along with the Ministry of Environmental Affairs. They've come down hard on acts like this and curbed a lot of them, but they still go on in remote corners. Now, if you look at the middle, the bottom middle picture is of a hulock gibbon trying to cross a railway track. Now, it's unfortunate when you have this population, you need to ensure that people can get around. So there's a lot of linear infrastructure, which is roads and railways that are needed to get these people around between cities and towns. So they run through some of our forests. And sometimes what happens, like in this picture, is that the hulock gibbons are forced to come onto the ground. They really like doing that, but they're forced to come onto the ground to cross these linear infrastructures because those forests have been destroyed to make these railroads and roads. And when this happens, there is a risk of them getting run over by trains, or in the case of roads, getting run over by cars. So that's a huge problem that India faces, the wildlife of India faces. And of course, deforestation, which is on the right, the picture of deforestation, which is a constant threat, which is a global threat, but is a problem in India as well. Sorry. So the deforestation is a problem, and that continues to plague all our forests, and that poses a direct threat to these primate species. And in the bottom right, you see the pet trade. And the pet trade is something that happens in India as well. We've got a large coastline, and we are connected. So there's a lot of ships coming in and out. There's a lot of flights coming in and out. Of course, there's land bridges between different countries to India. So controlling the pet trade is a gigantic task, and global organizations, along with the forest departments in India, are working towards curbing this trade. But it's still a large trade that's flourishing in certain pockets. But the law is coming down on them strongly to ensure that this doesn't happen. And of course, there are efforts being taken, but like the picture on the top left hand corner is a bridge that has been built over a road to ensure that these lion-tailed macaques can walk over them safely without being run over by cars. But then there are still roadkills that happen. I didn't want to put a picture up of one of them because it's a gruesome sight, but there are still roadkills that happen, and there's a constant battle of trying to make sure that these primates don't run into cars and trucks. And the picture in the middle is the rhesus macaques have always been used for the clinical trials. So these clinical trials use rhesus macaques to do trials on them. It still happens, but it's largely controlled right now, and it's only on a permit, a highly strict permit-based system, which is quite difficult to obtain. So the number of primates being used for these tests are drastically dropping. And of course, you will see when you drive around India, please do not feed the monkeys. It has become a huge problem because the monkeys are becoming bolder. And there are parts, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, there are towns in India where the people are caged and the monkeys are free because they've literally built cages around their houses so that the monkeys don't get in. And the monkeys are on the streets where the people are inside the cages. I mean, it is ironic, but that is what people have done to these monkeys. And on the bottom left is a picture of the forest department trying to relocate problem animals. In this case, it's a gray langur into the forest areas from human dominated landscapes. but there's only so much that the government and the forest department is capable of doing. I think the people of India need to take the onus upon them to make sure that they don't feed monkeys, to make sure that they don't throw garbage around, to make sure that there's no conflict, that there's no coming together of primates and humans. And I think that is the only solution to make sure that they don't depend on humans, and they stick to forested areas. Again, the one in the middle, the bottom left, is again trying to trap monkeys to relocate them, to put them out of human dominated areas. The one on the bottom right as well is, it seems inhumane, but this is the only way you can get a troop of macaques away from human dominated landscape, by trapping them in these cages and then releasing them into the forest. I am not suggesting that it's a solution, but that is the practice right now. And I think the solution lies in the hands of the people more than anything else, where they can then ensure that they're not feeding monkeys and macaques and langurs. And that, I think, can only be, we can only aim towards that if there's education. And that is the key to, I think, all our problems, the education, that the problems that we cause as humans towards these primates. And hopefully, in the future, we can educate all of India to ensure that the conflict between primates and humans is minimized. Now, that pretty much brings me to the close of my slide, and I close with this one photograph, which is of this macaque trying to survive in a city, because some of the forests have been destroyed and now they're forced to come into our cities. So you can see the huge mass of people, which is India, and this macaque, hanging upside down on, is a photo not by me but by a gentleman called Paul Kennedy, and a photo of this macaque trying to get across this electric wire and then try and survive in this human dominated landscape. So I just hope in the near future that uh, the future bodes well for these primates, and the people can protect more forests and ensure that these primates survive in them and don't come into conflict with humans in the future. And that is the end of my presentation. Uh, Over to you, Rob, and yeah, I'll let you take things through.
All right, thank you, Varun. Now, before we dive into the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that if you do have a question, you can submit it via the question field in your control panel. Just go to the upper right-hand corner. You'll see those three lines up there. Click on those, and you'll see the question field. And that's where we're reading from today, folks. All right, let's get to them. So, tell me, where do orangutans fit into the old world, new world model there?
So the orangutans fit into the old world model. They don't fit into the new world. They fit into the old world model, and they speciated from the great apes out of Africa, and then speciated into Southeast Asia. So they fit into the old world monkeys.
Great, thank you. So, do we know why the langurs have those orange eyes? Does it give them any advantages?
Well, specific to certain species, the orange eyes could be a play of light as well sometimes. And I will have to read up a little bit more on that particular question, Rob, because I'm not sure as to why that particular color, they have that particular color. I will have to read up a little bit more and then get back to you on that one. I'm not entirely certain.
Perfect. No, no worries. Thank you so much. Um, so, is a wet nose versus a dry nose an important distinction?
It
Is it
is. It is because I mean when cercerines and haplorines, which I spoke about in my presentation, is basically wet nose and dry nose. Now, if you look at the dry nose macaque, I mean the dry nose monkeys, you're typically looking at your macaques, your the old world African primates. You're looking at the orangutans and all of that. When you're looking at the wet nose, it's typically your lemurs, your lorises, and things like that. So there is a distinction, and it's an evolution, and that is just a outwardly visible distinction. But there's lots of other distinctions in terms of the morphology of the two groups, and the way they've evolved, and the time frame of when they evolved. So the wet nose and the dry nose is just a common way of distinguishing them, but not entirely why they're distinguished. So.
Is it an adaptation to climate, or is it a diet thing that causes the wet nose versus the dry nose? Do we know?
It is an evolutionary development. I don't know if climate has an implication on why they're wet nose and dry nose. I can read up a little bit about that and get back to you on that. Yeah.
No worries, thank you. So the macaque has this red face. Now, is that a pigment or is that diet? Do we know what causes the coloring?
So there's various. So the macaque has the red face, and not all the macaques have it. Even within that particular troop. So it's a sign of the mood of the macaque, and sometimes they develop that pigment as well in certain species. But and sometimes it could be a case of disease, like when they're rabied, you find that they're much more red in the face when they're rabied, and so there's multiple reasons why they've got the red faces, but not all of them within the troop will have them. So if you notice, it'll be certain individuals, and it's certain bigger males, and even sometimes smaller, smaller primates have them, and so there's various reasons for it, and it's not one particular reason.
Oh, that's fascinating. Thank you for that. So when they do relocate the monkeys, do they tend to stay in the forest, or do they make their way back to the urban areas?
So that's a great question, Rob. So why I said that's not a solution is precisely because of that. So when you relocate, these are intelligent species. So when you relocate an animal that knows that a human habitation is easy source of food, and put them into the forest, they are going to go and find the closest human habitation to that forest and then harass them there. So you're essentially not solving the problem, but you're passing on the problem from uh, essentially one town or village to another. So it doesn't solve the problem; it just makes them come back out. And so it's a temporary fix, but it's not a permanent solution.
Great, thank you for that. Are there strategies for solving this problem that are you working on?
So there are talks of strategies. Let me put it that way. Well, India, as you know, was part of the old the British colonial system. So we've mastered bureaucracy. So when it comes to taking action, there's a lot of processes and a lot of departments and a lot of people you have to you know go through before things get done on the ground. Now, to answer your question, there are sort of strategies being put in place where they are, sterilizing some of these troops that are coming into contact, regularly with the human populations. These strategies are in place, but they're not really happening. So the processes are, they're lined out. The processes are, on paper, they're there, but they're not really practiced on the ground due to various reasons. One is funding, one is sentiment, religious sentiment. One is just the lack of manpower, which again goes back to the question of funding. So we have ideas, but not being executed at the moment.
So, would you say that the younger generation in India has a more evolved ethic toward wildlife than the previous generations? How is culturally the attitude toward wildlife changing in India?
Well, the thing is that there is a larger push towards moving people from rural India towards the urban centers. And that's a slow process because we are a large country and we've got a billion plus people, like I said. But so when that happens, there are populations that are moving from rural areas into urban landscapes. Now, what that does is takes off some pressure from the forests around the. Usually, the intact forests are in rural areas, not in urban centers. Now, to answer your question, so there is a lot of education initiatives that are going into educating the rural youth to make sure that because they're the ones who are the front line of tomorrow's fight against, tomorrow's fight to protect these species. You've got the villages and the towns close to tiger reserves and protected forests and wildlife sanctuaries and national parks. The villages and the kids of those villages are going to be your tomorrow's forest guards and your guides and your naturalists, and they are going to be fighting the fight tomorrow. So education his take like a lot of emphasis is given on education, but I think if I were to take a guess, I think the rural youth are far more in tune with wildlife than the urban youth. So that bit is going on, and hopefully that translates into better conservation stories and conservation successes in the future.
Well, I really appreciate that thoughtful answer, Varun. Unfortunately, that is going to be the last question that we do have time for today. So I'd like to hand it back to you for your closing comments.
Well, thank you, Rob, and thank you for the gracious introduction and the questions. And I would hope to end this presentation on a positive and say that although I did throw a lot of problems in in the presentation, but you've got to understand that there's fantastic wildlife in India that still do really well in protected areas. The primates are doing well in certain pockets. Like we could do more. Like in every other country, we could do more. And please, come to India, see the wildlife of India, support us through visiting the country, and support our wildlife through visiting the country. And I hope to see some people from this webinar visit India in the next few years and do the Grand India tour, which is a great tour to see a lot of the primates in India. And if not, at least sign up for more webinars and get your India fix through the NatApp Daily Doses of Nature. So yeah, that's my 2 cents, and I hope to end on that note. Well, thank you.
Varun, thank you so much for taking the time to present this fascinating webinar to us today. And well, I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. So if you are interested in information on how you can travel to India with NatHab, please give us a call at 800-543-8917, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Well, join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including our registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on the website soon. With that, I will conclude today's webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.